Thanks for clicking on the video. Like, subscribe, and share if you find this useful or interesting. Okay, so last time we created these 4 green additional cutting points on these curves. They are all towards the corner from the closest red point, and each green point controls a loop of yellow points. So this guy right here runs up to here, to the back to the bottom here, and closes this loop. This one here does the same thing up here, 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 and here. This loop right here from this point runs horizontal across the bottom. Horizontal when you look at it, kind of like this. And this last one here controls this loop here, here in the back, here in the back, and back to here. Okay, to produce the elements we need to make the rolling blend, we need to chop up these curves here. We need a little segment that runs from here to here, from here to here, and then here. We need a little segment of the curve that runs from here to here and from here to here. Okay. And the mechanics of how we're going to do that are going to be absolutely horrendous. So I'm going to tell you real quick why it is the way it is. It's not an excuse. The process sucks. I'm just telling you the reason. And the reason is Silk has been around for a long time, even though I only work on it a little bit here and there when I can. FreeCAD has gotten better over the years, but it still has a problem with jumbling references. Lines reversing, this line thinking it becomes this line, and so you lose your reference. From the beginning, Silk has had one focus: stability and being able to fix models. So in order to be able to fix the model, no matter what FreeCAD does in terms of renumbering and changing the references, that means that everything has to be editable. And so for one thing, when I create a point on a curve, I never trust this point object that is actually a part of the curve. See, a FreeCAD curve has a line that you can click on, and it has a point that you can click on. But this is very ambiguous because you don't know which of the 3 curves you clicked, and this point on the FreeCAD curve could flip over to here. And these internals of FreeCAD are things that I can't fix. But by creating my own points and being able to adjust exactly where they are with numbers and formulas, I can always fix my model. Even if FreeCAD completely scrambles a sketch, I can delete the sketch, remake it, and I can fix my model. So that's pretty powerful. But the circus you have to put up with to make that happen is really crazy. And right now, what we're going to do is going to make us deal head on with the worst aspect of it. I want to create a cut point from here to here. So I need to select this curve, the point over here, and then this point. But I don't want to do it from this point here. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to group all these cuts as a folder. I'm going to turn on the curve start, because for this curve right here, I want to go from this black start point up to here. But no matter what I do, I can't select my black point when there's curves on top of it. Because even if I select a point, it's always going to pick the point that belongs to the curve, not my black one. So here's what I have to do. It's horrible. This is just the way it is. I click on this curve, I hide it. I click on this curve, I hide it. So now at least there won't be any confusion about these 2 curves. I select this curve. I need to have it selected, but I need to hide it with spacebar. I still have the curve selected. Now I can, oops, and I didn't have control, so I lost my curve. Nice. I'm going to turn it back on. I just happen to know which one it is, but otherwise you would have to turn everything back on. Select this guy, spacebar to hide it. Select this guy, spacebar to hide it. Select this curve. Hit spacebar to hide it. Hold the control key. Now click this point. Now click this point. Curve segment. I got it done. Now I can hide it. And now for these 2, I don't have the problem of all the curves running into each other, and I don't have the problem of the start point being there. So this one is more reasonable. I can just select this point, select the curve, control select this point, control select this point, create my segment. And now I have my 2 segments here, and that's what I need to do on all of those eventually. But right now we're only worried about this corner. We're just going to blend one corner for this video. So now I'm going to do this one here. So first, I hide everything else that could possibly lead to confusion. Now I select this curve. I hide it, but it's still selected. And I go from the start point to this point, create my curve segment. Turn all the curves back on. Hide the segment itself so that its endpoint doesn't cause confusion. Now I can select this curve. I don't have to hide it this time because I'm not dealing with the endpoints and I've hidden the control polygon. I have the curve selected. I go from this point to this point. Make my segment. Okay, that was absolutely horrible. That was an absolutely horrible way to create these 4 curve segments. And I do know what I need to do to fix it. I can't just say, oh, it's FreeCAD. It doesn't let me select my black point, blah, blah, blah. I know what I need to do. What I need to do is conceptually very simple. When you click on this curve, I need to program something that says, are there any points on this curve? And if I click right here, it needs to automatically say, oh yeah, I found a point to the left of it, and I found a point to the right of it. And so you should only have to click the curve and hit the curve segment, and if you've already made the points, you shouldn't have to select them. So it's very easy conceptually, and I just need to do it. And then the solution, well, what if I want to go from this point to this point, but I have a point in the middle and I don't want it to stop right there? Easy. You'll just be able to hide these points, and when you click here, it'll look at all the points on the curve, it'll ignore the ones that are hidden, and then it'll just give you from this point to this point. So very simple conceptually. I know I have to do it. I haven't done it yet because I'm making these videos to document this current state. Otherwise, I'll just program forever and never document anything. So that's what we're going to have to do a bunch of times. It's really annoying. But for now, we're done. We have what we need for this corner. So I'm not going to need these big curves anymore. Let me just turn on the surfaces instead. And let's see what it takes to make the rolling blend here. I'm going to turn on my restored surfaces and my blended edges. Actually, don't even need the whole surfaces anymore. And now I'm ready to work. So what do I need? I need to create a little square in here. So I'm going to use these guys and these guys after I make curves out of them. But then I'm going to need these sections here because I'm going to need to redefine what is being blended here. And instead of blending all the way back to here, let me turn on all my cut points again. Instead of blending all the way back to here, which was, if you remember, defined by a segment that ran from here to here, and then the middle segment, now we're only going to be blending back to here, which is going to be defined by this segment here. Okay, so let's take these 4 segments we made and put curves back on them. I hit cubic curve, down arrow, cubic curve, down arrow, cubic curve, down arrow, cubic curve. And now for all 4 of these segments, I have created curve pieces. So these are the curved pieces I need to make the little square that I will round. And this here will define the setback on this blend. I need a second curve to explain how to create this segment, but I already have that. It is the middle right here. So let's do it. I'll need the overall surfaces because that is what I make the segments from. So I select this surface, I select this little curve right here, this little curve right here, segment, and there you go. This little piece is what will become the rounded triangle. But right away, let's also make the new piece along the edge that will correspond to the new blend. So I select this surface. Which edge is it for? It's for this edge. I click the middle. And then how far back is it going to go? It's going to go this far back. Instead of going all the way to the red point, the new one will only go this far back. And I create the segment. Same thing for this guy here. We're just going to do it for this corner, but that means we need to adapt this blend and we need to adapt this blend. So for this blend right here, it comes from this surface. It goes this far along the edge itself. And how far back should it go? It should go back this far. Instead of going all the way to a red point, the new one will be only this far back. Surface, middle, and new inset. Create the segment. Okay, so now let me turn off a couple of things. Let me turn off, let me turn off the blended edges. And let me hide this surface for a minute so we can, well, not just this surface, but let me hide all the main surfaces for a minute so we can see the pieces we have a little bit better. We have a new piece right here that we'll use to create the rounding. And because the rounding is going to consume some space, I have to push back the blend. The edge blend used to be all the way to here, but now it's only going to be here. I don't edit the segment that was used previously to make the blend. I just create a new one in case I want to switch back. And it's just too painful to try to find the old segment grid and to move its reference. So I just make a new one. It makes it backwards compatible, and we don't have to do pointless surgery on something like this. Okay. This leaves two gaps. These two gaps will be filled with segments of the original surface, just like this one. So let's make those segments. I turn the primary surfaces back on. I select the surface. Hey, I want to fill this gap right here. How do I define it? Well, I define it in terms of the middle segment here. Oh, it's putting, because this is a straight line, this segment here is getting in, this grid here is in my way. I'm going to hide it. Select this surface. I want to fill in this little gap right here. It's this wide relative to this edge, and it's this wide relative to this edge. I create the segment. Okay, let me turn back on the grid that corresponds to the edge blend real quick. Okay, so this grid here, select it so it highlights. It doesn't really highlight in a nice color. That's annoying. See, it highlights. Okay, I have to leave my mouse on. Now I'm trying to make it highlight green. It's hard to, okay. This control grid here that now shows up in green, that is the new way to define this portion of the edge blend. And so is this one. And this little piece right here is a backfill based on the original surface. So right away, I can put a standard surface back on there. Now I need to fill in this gap here as well. This grid, unfortunately, I'd love to show it while I'm doing this, but it's going to interfere with me selecting this portion of the curve here. So I have to hide it. I select the surface. I select this piece of the curve here to say, hey, it's going to be this wide. And then I select this little piece to say, hey, it's going to be this long in this direction. I create the segment, and immediately this is a segment where I can create a restored portion of the surface. Okay, so I've restored the surface. I have no need to look at this grid anymore. This guy right here, I've restored the surface, so I have no reason to look at this little grid anymore. And now I can turn back on this edge blending grid. I'm going to hide the original surfaces. And now I have created the topology of a rounded corner as far as how we chop up the main surface. So first off, let's adjust our blends. Let's adjust our blends so they now connect to here. I'm going to go in my restored surface and see what are my blended surfaces doing right now. Right now, my blended surfaces are still reaching underneath this little piece and all the way back up to this point here. So the surface only has one input, this control grid 464. I'm going to click it from right here, and I click it again, it becomes highlighted here. I'm going to turn it on. And I see that this grid has two input grids. I want to change one of them. The first one, remember I always do things counterclockwise, so I know that I worked around counterclockwise this way. So I know that this little segment right here should be, if I did things right, this first segment here should be a part of this surface, and this segment here should be a part of this surface here. So if I remember things correctly, it's this one that I want to change. So in the grid, I leave the grid 0, and I'm going to change the grid 1. Let's find out if I was correct. I want to edit the link. And instead of being whatever it was, I'm going to link it to this new portion right here. I click it. I hit OK. I hit F5. And look at that. Turns out that I remembered correctly. So now, this smaller grid, which only goes to here instead of going to here, has been fed into the blending grid. So now the blending grid only reaches to here instead of reaching to here. And the surfaces has updated automatically, and it only reaches up to here. Let's do it again for this guy. Okay, and now I've used this new smaller segment. I don't need to look at it anymore. I'm going to hide it. Now I see my blending grid has been adjusted to go up to this point, and so has the surface. Let's do it again for this guy here. This guy has a control grid. I show it. This control grid is currently reaching all the way back up to this point here, which corresponds to the red point. I want it to move down, so it corresponds to the green point. I will do that by swapping in this new smaller grid. Which one of the two is it? Well, if I remember correctly, because my span curves run from bottom to top, I should have done this one first and then this one. That means that once again, it should be the second piece. I also have another clue. I know that I made this segment here on the surface on this face before I ever made the bottom cap. So it makes sense that this guy here has a lower number than this guy, because this bottom cap is actually the last one I made. So if I work from bottom to top when defining this grid, it should be the second one. And I also know that I created this piece before I created this piece, so everything matches in terms of my expectations. I'm going to edit this second one, and for the second segment that defines this blending grid, I'm going to swap in this piece. Hit OK. And I will know if it's right if this grid moves down to here. I hit F5. The grid moved down. This blending grid now works with this smaller grid to define the blend in this direction. But now I'm getting errors because things don't match in this corner here anymore. And I also probably have errors somewhere up in here because now this blend doesn't follow up in this section. I don't care. Right now, I'm just showing you how to make this one corner. When we do the same thing to all these other corners, this thing here will work itself out. For now, let's just make this corner. So I have used this piece here. I don't need to look at it anymore. This blend has been properly adjusted in terms of this corner. The model has errors until we do everything, but that's okay. We don't care right now. Okay, so I've adapted my blends. They have a new setback. This portion of the blend is now smaller to make room for this guy. This portion of the blend and this portion of this other blend are unaffected, and I have backfilled my faces. Now let's work with this little piece right here. So far, there have been no new object types. We have created more pieces of curves, more grids that corresponds to pieces of the main surface. and we've shifted the blends. Let's use this piece. I want to round this grid and so that this corner disappears and I have a smooth curve. I have to select this corner exactly, not anything else, not a piece of the grid. It has to be this corner. I need to identify which corner will disappear. And when I've done so, I hit this tool. It's the control grid 643, one grid 44. What does that mean? I'm gonna, hold on. Before I do it, I already created it because I had it selected, but with this thing unselected, I'm just gonna hit this tool. Hold on. With this unselected. Oh, did I not create a tool? It looks like I didn't create a tooltip. So I'm just gonna hover over it. The name, the _3 means that in the end, it will be a 3-sided object. And the one grid 44 means that it is created from one grid 44 object. And it says select a control grid 44 by one of its corners and apply the function. Let's just do it. Here. I select the grid by the corner point and I hit the tool. It's hard to see with the color that it uses, so I'm going to rotate myself here. See, in purple, you can see an overlay that does a spider web kind of thing in here. I still have the original grid selected, so I hide it. But if you had clicked off for some reason, just select the square grid and hide it. This is the corner rounding grid. It does not produce a high quality surface, but it is a scaffolding piece. Now that I have this, I have a 6-sided edge right here, the same as the 6-sided edge of one of these edge blends. It does a weird thing in the corner, and this point right here is fairly low quality. But it doesn't matter because it's just a temporary scaffold. What is really, really good about this thing is that it has 2 rows of 6 that are a reasonable quality. And because I have these 2 rows of 6, I can select this grid. I'm going counterclockwise. And now I can apply a 3-3 subgrid. This 3-3 subgrid is the same type of thing that I use to make the blends in these areas. As a matter of fact, I'm going to turn them back. Turn this off. I'm going to go back in these corner blend surfaces, and I'm going to turn on all the ones that are not star surfaces. This guy right here is made from corner subgrids. Corner subgrids like these. And when I have 4 of them, I can create these blue surfaces which nicely blends my edge blends. And this is what I call a corner blend. And this is a fairly high quality. Now I can do the same thing in this corner here. First off, I'm going to put a 6-4 surface on here just to fill it in. This is a temporary filler, and as a matter of fact, I'm going to color code it red so that I don't forget to swap it out later. I make the surface and I code it red so it gives me a clue that this is more or less taken care of, but not completely. Now I can hide this grid. No. Now I'm going to go around the loop and make the subgrids. I'm going to need the grid for this one here. So I select the edge blend, and in here it tells me which one is its blending grid. I click it twice, and now I can hit spacebar to turn it on. I'm not going to edit it, but I'm going to go around this newly 4-sided hole to make a corner blend just like this one. This piece here fakes having an edge blend in this area. And now that I have 4 blends, I can use the standard higher quality blend. So I click this grid here, and then I click this grid. I'm going counterclockwise. And I just put a 3x3 subgrid on it. Then I do the next one. I click this grid. Control click this grid. 3x3. This grid. control click this grid, 3 by 3. Okay, now I don't need to look at the edge blending grids. And I don't need to look at a lot of things, as a matter of fact. So in here, I'm going to go in my blending setup. Actually, I'm going to hide everything in the blending setup. I also don't need to look at the points and the curve segments. And I don't need to look at these curve segments either. Now that I've done all the setbacks and I've turned this little square into this rounded spider web grid, I have faked having a fourth blend, say like this one, and I was able to create 4 subgrids as if I had 4 blends. Now I can select these subgrids counterclockwise, and I can create a full 6 by 6 grid for them. Now that I have a full 6 by 6 grid, I can put a 6 by 6 surface on it. I still have a bunch of errors because I haven't done all of them, and this has an impact which travels. You can see that this change of the blend here affects this area here. But right now we're just doing one corner. So I'm going to leave this little piece of the surface on. I don't need to look at the spider web right now. I don't need to look at the subgrids, and I don't need to look at the whole grid. I have a rolling corner. It's no longer trying to mush 3 blends together into one thing. It has 4 sides because of this thing, and it's much higher quality. And I can edit the setbacks. Now let me turn all these new points back on. Specifically the rolling leaders, that's what I really care about. I'm going to turn the rolling leaders back on. I'm going to turn the cuts back on so you can see what's happening. Here on this guy, it has a formula. So I can't just type a number here, but when I type equal, or I hit the formula editor, I see that in the formula I have a simple number right up front. Instead of being 0.75, which means from the corner here all the way up to here, hold on. Before I do that, let me turn on the curve start points. Blending setup, so you can see what the proportion is. This guy here right now is at 75% from here to here. I type equal, or I hit the formula button, and here I'm going to say no, you're at 0.25. 0.25 of the way from here to here. Hit OK, and everything updated. And you can see that this has become much bigger, and I can vary the size of this triangle. I only have 2 parameters. I can't design this curve here. It has to be a rectangular portion of the main surface that has been rounded along one edge. And you don't have a whole lot of freedom in it. You can only vary it by 2 parameters. I go to the other point, I type equal. And same thing, instead of doing 0.75, I'm going to say 0.25. And it updates. Now you can see how this corner is really rolling. I have a massive fillet in this direction. And even though this part of the blend is long, I still end up with a teeny small fillet that just rolls around the big one. That's why I use the word rolling. This small fillet here rolls around this big one. And if I wanted to, like right now, this leg of the blend is pretty big, but it still gives the impression of a small fillet just in this area. I can also edit this point and bring it back up, but it won't have that much of an effect. It's already handling it. The difference in size on this piece is already handling the separation. Let me just show you here. I could say 0.125 instead. This is going to reduce this distance right here. So it'll make, in a way, it'll make this fillet even smaller, but it's not going to have this much effect because this portion was already fairly flat. But let's do it. I hit return, and I have tucked in this blend. Let's give this some quality. What is the quality on this face right now? It's actually not that high. Yeah, all these are pretty low quality, but it seems to make, let's just do a couple of things. Let's say these guys, the three blends, and this surface, and this surface, and the surface close to it. Let's just do the quality on those. 1 degree, 0.3. And there you have it. Let's switch them to be the same color, just for now, just so we see what it looks like all together. And let's pick this guy. There you go. Let's do these two as well, because right now they're very visually distracting and they make it look like it's not that good. There you go. This separation of the blending into two zones with different sizes, with a large fillet in one direction and a small fillet in another direction, is what I call a rolling blend. And it relies on this triangular surface. Now, this guy here is not very high quality, but once again, it scales, so I use it until I'm really done with the model. This one is almost completely flat, so you can't really see the defect. But remember the spider web that's inside of it? This is not a really high quality surface point, and so it will be worth replacing with a filling surface. But when we replace this face with just a filling surface, it's going to have a really easy time, because this curve that it has to incorporate along with these two edges is awfully close to being on the surface itself. So it will be able to create the surface really easy, and then when it goes to make the trimming curve, it's already on the surface, so I think you get a really good result. And the use of two blends of two sizes is really important for design, because this does something really cool. Our eyes, let me increase the resolution on these guys as well, because right now they're showing a ghost break in the line because of the mismatch in resolution, and when I increase the resolution, the lines I was seeing here disappear. Separating a blend into two sizes does something really amazing. Our eyes are drawn to defects, but our eyes emphasize the sharpest defect they see. So the first thing you see is this sharp corner here. You really see the sharp corner running along these three pieces. So you see it so strongly that you don't really notice the break right here and the break right here. Because this looks so defined compared to this one, you don't really notice this area. And then when you look at this a little bit longer, you're like, well, I can see the feature. I can clearly see that there's something else going on here, but it doesn't look that bad. So you're drawn to a single break, and it doesn't look that bad. You don't really notice that there's an additional break. If you could see the additional break, like I did by highlighting these surfaces, then you would say, oh, this is not that good because it creates crosses. But as long as the break runs in a single direction, our eyes say, hey, this is pretty good. And this is something you'll if you look around designed objects around you all the time, around you, You will find this trick used all the time, to make a bunch of surfaces look good, and so you don't see the cross happening everywhere. You simply make one round much larger than the other one. And this is what I was already doing with this thing. I was saying, like, it makes a lot of sense to make the blend larger in one direction than the other. That way it forces the eye to run along one feature. And if that feature appears uninterrupted, aesthetically we accept it. But when the sizes are equal, instead of making one line our eyes follow, it makes a cross, and our eyes don't like that cross. And this is something that, like, I'm really picky about that, and you might think this guy's crazy. But this industrial design and cool looking objects and cool looking consumer products use this trick all the time. So it's not just me that likes this, and I didn't invent it. I just played with these surfaces, and when I ran into this setup, I said, this is what's happening all the time in industrial design. We're tricked into accepting surface discontinuities because our eye is drawn in one direction. So this is really powerful shit. Okay, this video has gone on long enough. Next time, I'm going to do the rest. I'm going to do the entire top face and the entire bottom face. It will be a massive slog, but I want to show you what it takes. This video was to show you how to do one. Next time I'm going to do them all so we can time it and find out how long it takes. Then when we have this, and we have this object in our library, we'll go back and do the surfboard. All right, catch you next time.